Hello, everyone. My name is Martha McCabe, and I'm the Senior Vice President of Community Partnerships at Project Lead the Way, and most recently served for 10 years as the Executive Director of the Kansas City STEM Alliance. It is my distinct pleasure to serve as today's facilitator, and will be moderating our panel conversation today. As we begin, please introduce yourself in the chat and let us know where you're joining us from. The STEM Ally webinar series is brought to you by a partnership between Project Lead the Way and EdWeek. At Project Lead the Way, we believe learning by doing helps prepare students for a STEM-driven world. Our project-based curriculum, coupled with best-in-class professional development and grants for school adoption, supports teachers in creating an environment to make every student in every grade STEM successful. As a national nonprofit organization, Project Lead the Way is proud to reach 2.5 million students in elementary, middle, and high schools in all 50 states. Whether it's kindergarten learning, coding, or high school ally. About us at Project Lead the Way at PLTW.org. One reminder, that's PLTW.org. If you are interested in earning CEUs for attending this webinar, EdWeek is providing them to all participants. Certificates of completion are available to all registered live attendees who attend 53 minutes or more of this webinar. Your certificate will be emailed to you. The PDF certificate verifies 1 hour of professional development credit. As with all professional development hours delivered, EdWeek recommends each educator verify ahead of the webinar broadcast that the content will qualify for professional development in your school, district, county, or state with your supervisor, human resources professional, and/or principal or superintendent's office. Making connections with and having impact on your community can support your teaching and your students' learning and engagement. In today's educator panel, we will hear and share ideas for not only bringing community and its resources into your learning environment, but also supporting students to engage and give back. We will delve into the power of community engagement and its role in encouraging students to step out into the world for experiential STEM learning. In this webinar, we will explore innovative approaches to bridge the gap between classrooms and the community. And let's discover how collaboration between educators, local organizations, and community leaders can enrich STEM education by providing students with real-world experiences and hands-on learning opportunities. Before I introduce our amazing panel, who will dive into the content, I wanted to share a few tips on how to maximize your webinar experience. Please join the conversation, share your stories and experiences, and ask questions by engaging with fellow participants and panelists. Our panelists and I are available to answer questions during the webinar, so if you have a question, please submit it through the Q&A and not through the group chat. Now's a good time to review some of the technical aspects of today's presentation. Please check the audio setting on your computer, as well as your speaker volume settings if you're having an audio trouble. If you are still having issues, please see our detailed audio troubleshooting file available in the resource list under the Q&A window. If the console freezes or you hear music after the presentation has begun, please refresh your browser. There are also some other icons that open additional features in our webinar console. You can read about today's speakers in the speaker bio window, click on the resource list to download a copy of today's slides and other resources, or join the group chat. Follow the conversation about today's webinar on Twitter using the hashtag #EWWebinar. We welcome your questions. Please type them in the Q&A box accessible through the tabs located on your console and not in the group chat. Finally, an on-demand archive of today's presentation will be available online in the next 24 hours. Both the archive and a free down-to-load version of the PowerPoint slides will be accessible through edweek.org or using the same login as you used today. Thank you so much to our panelists for being here today to share their stories. We'd like each of you to briefly introduce yourself and answer the following question during your introduction. In your experience, how can partnerships with community organizations and experts enrich students' learning experiences with STEM? Chrissy, let's get started with you. Chrissy, how about we swing back to you, and I'm going to go ahead and transition to Heather. Would you introduce yourself and make some connections to STEM and community partnerships? And we'll loop back to Chrissy in just a little bit.
Well, hi, everyone.
Glad to be here.
Chrissy.
My name is Chrissy Chandler, and I have the privilege of serving as the Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion for the KC STEM Alliance. Lead the Way Computer Science Teacher, Computer Science Essentials, and Computer Science Principles.
Chrissy, we're going to ask you to go ahead and refresh your browser.
I'll just keep going. I thought I was doing good. I thought everyone could hear. I'll just keep going. As I said, I'm a Project Lead the Way Computer Science Essentials and Principles teacher, and I have the.
Okay, Heather, this is where we're going to pivot. Go ahead, Heather, and when Chrissy comes back, we'll bring her in on this first part to the question.
Thank you. My name is Heather Kleiner, PhD. I'm the founding chair of the North Louisiana STEAM Alliance, part of STEM Learning Ecosystems, and I'm the director of the Northwest Louisiana STEM Innovation Center. That's Region 7 for the La STEM Initiative. I cover 10 parishes in Northwest Louisiana. What I want to say is that community organizations are the pillar of STEM learning, and that it's very important to train local scientists to explain STEM at the level of the participants. So at my Science Center Museum, which is Sci-Port Discovery Center in Northwest Louisiana in Shreveport, what we do is we have trained local scientists how to make tabletop hands-on exhibits that represent their work. And what's really fun about this is that our scientists can teach students and teachers that there are jobs out there and that they have fun doing those jobs, and also that there are near peer mentors. They usually bring their graduate students along. I'll pass this off to Sandy unless Chrissy is ready.
Sandy, why don't you go, and we'll pick up Chrissy third.
Absolutely. Hi, I'm Sandy Roberts. I am a former biochemist who moved into education about 15 years ago when I discovered how much fun it was to teach my kids. I work with Science Friday, which is a nonprofit organization. We're dedicated to increasing the public's access to science and scientific information. And we do that in a number of ways, including a public radio show every Friday, podcasts, online journalism, live events, citizen science, and of course, free lessons and activities for K-12 educators, informal educators, and families. So definitely check out our website for some free resources. As I think about this, I often think about the ways that we can engage students in STEM to make it relevant to their lives and increase their motivation to learn, especially because I was a middle school teacher. They're a tough group. Nothing does that in quite the same way as connecting learners with people in their community and saying, how can you help? How can you make this community better? How can you improve your own neighborhood? And suddenly, whatever engineering design activity you're doing or scientific investigation you're doing, it becomes so much more personal for them. And it gives the students that opportunity to interact and learn directly from experts about things that really, really matter to them. But more importantly than that, it empowers them to realize that they're an expert too. They know their neighborhoods, their classmates, their communities in ways that most adults just don't. And it's really exciting for students to collaborate with adults in authentic and meaningful ways. It just shifts the dynamic, and that activates their problem solving and critical thinking skills in really exciting ways. They're much more willing to explore and research a problem that affects them directly. And often they're more open to being creative and developing solutions when there's that real world connection, and they can experience it firsthand. Plus, it gives them a sense of the larger picture as they realize that there are others in their community using STEM to solve problems, and that puts them on the path to future careers.
Thank you, Sandy. Chrissy, we're going to transition to you for your introduction and opening remarks to that question.
I hope this works this time. I'm so sorry, but let's give it a shot. So I am Chrissy Chandler, and I work for the 𝐤𝐶 STEM Alliance as the Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion and School Strategy. But I am also a Project Lead the Way computer science and computer science principles teacher. So as a teacher, we're always looking for a way to give our students the why behind the instruction we're offering. Why do you need to know how to code in Python if you have no plans to go to college for computer science? Why do I need to be a problem solver or a critical thinker when I want to be a hairstylist when I graduate? So connecting to industry really allows teachers to bring professionals in, whether it's in person or virtually, and it shows our students the why. Industry professionals are often able to show students how the skills they have attained in their career goes beyond just coding or problem solving. They're able to show how the skills that they're learning help them to reach their professional goals, even if those goals aren't related to the STEM field. And some of my most powerful learning experiences that I've observed have been when students were out on field trips with companies and they had the opportunity to tour and speak with professionals and engage. And a couple of those experiences actually led to internship opportunities for our students. So they've been very impactful, getting the students out in the community to engage with professionals. So thank you so much for that question, Martha. I'll hand it back off to you.
Well, you're welcome. I love that question. You know, what I really enjoy over the years of doing this work is seeing the spark in a young person's eyes when they make a connection to a possibility. You know, taking the time to engage in these experiences, educators and community partners is so worthwhile and so fulfilling. So thank you again for being here and sharing your knowledge and expertise with the audience. As we begin diving into additional questions, we've structured this webinar to have 3 questions, and the 3 panelists will take turns answering each question. So our next question is, so what positive outcomes have you observed in educators and students when it comes to connecting to the community? And I think we'll just stay with our same order. Heather, if you'd like to go first, and then we'll see if we can get Chrissy back in here.
Certainly. Well, I would say, you know, there are multiple positive outcomes. I would like to give a couple of examples. We had an internship program where we connected students with local businesses and had the school bus drive them to the different areas. This followed from an 18-week STEM enrichment course that we offered, doing outreach as Science Center Museum professionals to the school. And then the summer internship was offered. So first the students had the 18-week program, and then they had another program in the academic year where they did the internship with the local businesses, such as an orthotics company or the nursing school or Cyport itself. And then after that, I had a colleague who has internships at a medical school at the University of Arizona. And so 3 of the students out of those 7 applied for an internship at the University of Arizona. Now, this came as a challenge for the educators and the parents and the students, because this was a very intensive application process, something that even college students, you know, would tremble at. And they had to, you know, fill out the application, go through a Zoom interview, you know, convince the parents that this was worthwhile, and then get on the plane, you know, follow the students, get them on the plane to go for a paid 10-week internship program at the medical school, right alongside the medical students. Turned out that all 3 were accepted. 2 out of the 3 went. And, you know, some of the times students don't even go across the Red River. For them to go to another state, several states away, and they came back presenting videos that they made, because not only did they do the internship doing biomedical research, but they made videos of it, which was really amazing. We were so proud of them. And, you know, this influenced everybody at the entire school. Another example is the butterfly garden that's planted outside of our Science Center Museum that a local school teacher from the high school, Caddo Middle Magnet, Middle Magnet, maybe the middle school. She helped the students plant a butterfly garden. We needed this for the longest time because we were having beehive failure because everything gets mowed up and down the parkway where we're located. Now we're seeing monarch butterflies up and down the parkway, and we can attribute this to the school and the students and the teacher. So I would say that, you know, there are many other positive outcomes. I just don't have time to talk about them all, but the enthusiasm is just overwhelming.
I appreciate
pass this
that.
off to Chrissy. Yes.
Go ahead, Chrissy, now that you're back.
All right, my hope is that we've solved all the technical difficulties, but you're getting to experience real life school stuff here, so we're making it authentic. You know, I always took my upper level computer science students on field trips to local computer science companies. So I was able to develop some really good partnerships, particularly with their community engagement people, so I could get my kids in there. So I was able to connect with the local cybersecurity firm that has a national footprint and take my students on a field trip to tour the facilities and sit for a panel discussion led by several young professionals that work for the company. Well, one of my students was so excited. He knew he wanted to go into computer science when he went to college, but he didn't know exactly what he wanted to study. So after the field trip, he decided he wanted to concentrate on cybersecurity. Well, he's now in his second year of a paid internship with this same company and is looking forward to being hired full-time in a permanent position after graduation. Another student that I took on this same field trip was initially thinking he wanted to go into network administration, which is, I mean, that's great. That's a valid field. That's kind of where I came from. But after the field trip, he decided cybersecurity was for him. Well, he's now serving the United States Army and looking forward to specializing in cyber defense after his basic training is complete. In addition, I've just heard awesome conversations after students have had these experiences about how they enjoy touring the companies and speaking with the professionals. So even if they weren't necessarily decisive after these experiences, like I know I want to be a cybersecurity professional, just like these two students that I mentioned, they often still talked about how, hey, I'm excited about the opportunity to work for a large company like this. And then they begin to ask questions about the skills they need to prepare them for this kind of success, the success they've observed from these young industry professionals that they had the opportunity to engage with.
Thank you, Chrissy. Sandy, how about you?
Those are some great examples. Great examples. Both of my kids were lucky enough to have internships in high school as well, and it made such a difference. And I'm obviously lucky with Science Friday. We get to work with the International Space Station and citizen scientists and connect kids all the time. And one point I want to make is that it doesn't have to wait till high school, right? One thing I've noticed is that students, when they work with their community, they take great ownership and pride in what they're doing. So I think of a project we did in elementary school where the kids actually got to design a new park. And, you know, they really felt like they were making a difference. It was incredibly motivating. They did all the design work. They worked with the construction. They actually got to build this park over the course of a weekend. And, you know, they learned new skills, but it also made them resilient in ways that they wouldn't otherwise be when they were trying to solve a problem that was really personal about like what piece of equipment they really wanted. It makes them think about the ways that what they're doing affects the people and the place that they know that's really personal to them. And they're a lot more willing to persevere when they face challenges. It rained the entire weekend. We built this park and none of them went home. They all kept going because it was important to them and their community. But they had, you know, concrete goals and they could envision what the results were going to look like if they were successful. And working within the community also helped them feel seen and heard, because adults were giving them their time and focus and really listening to what they said. And they could raise issues that mattered to them and have those needs heard in a way that maybe they don't always have access to, especially some of our students that are more marginalized or minoritized populations, kids with disabilities, who may not feel like they get to take part in some of the big projects. This was something that they were still important to making realize. And all of those kids are high schoolers now. And let me tell you, they protect that park. They are there making sure that park is beautiful and pristine. So for educators, you know, for me, that community-based learning gave me an opportunity to build connections and recruit stakeholders in the work that I was doing at the school, in my library programs. And it opens up these pathways for more projects and more mentorships and more internships and funding. Let's be honest. Businesses are wonderful supporters. And it can really help with the workload too, because those volunteers can really help with the planning and the implementation of these big projects. So I think it's really beneficial to educators to think beyond our classrooms too, and to collaborate with others that are passionate about what they do. And it's really inspiring and energizing. So great ideas.
I would agree, Sandy. I remember a very seasoned, but new to Project Lead the Way teacher sharing that her experiences in community collaboration extended into improved collaboration inside her own school with fellow teachers in a transdisciplinary fashion. Actually, she was considering retirement, and she chose to delay her retirement because she was having more fun teaching now with both the internal and external collaboration. And she also noticed that she was reaching students more effectively. So the power of collaboration is really demonstrated throughout for both students and for educators. And that's a win for us across the country. So let's move on to our next question. Would you please share some inspiring examples of success stories of partnerships for STEM as a result of the connections made between the classroom and the community? And Chrissy, we'll go ahead and start with you.
Yeah, so I feel like one of the things I want teachers to walk away with is that industry wants to help. There are people out there who want to come into your classroom and they want to work with their students. So keep that in mind. And don't be afraid to reach out, because they want to be there to help. I once took my high school robotics team to an event at a large engineering firm, just thinking we're going to show off the robots. We were having trouble getting mentors, but I was just thinking, oh, maybe we'll walk away with one person that'll come by one day a week, and that's a win. So we went, they showed off this the robot. They had such a great time, but the employees were so impressed by the students that several of them signed up to mentor the team. That was 5 years ago, and all of those mentors are still with the team. And I've also brought industry professionals to co-teach with me. It's hard when you're teaching programming to know every programming language, and I struggled with C#. So I got an industry professional to come in, teach C# for Unity game development, because that's just not a strength for me. And how powerful, one, it showed the kids, okay, Miss Chandler doesn't know everything, and she's willing to reach out for help. So I should be willing and be okay to do the same. And so they got to develop this unique skill set that allowed them to create virtual field trips for early childhood students that couldn't go on field trips during COVID. And they got to go and share those field trip experiences with those young people. So just some very positive experiences by being willing to step outside of our comfort zones, knowing that there are industry professionals out there that want to help us.
Absolutely. Heather.
Chrissy, I may be talking to you because we're going to be starting a first robotics competition community-based team, so I could use your expertise. What I would like to say is that the most exciting and most meaningful experience that we have is actually an unconventional classroom and unconventional students. It's called Bars Without Barriers, but the bars are actually prison bars. As you can see, there's razor wire in this image across the chain link fence. And we do outreach every Wednesday at Caddo Correctional Center's reentry facility with dads, fathers, or, fathers or uncles who are incarcerated, and their children and their caregivers, their non-incarcerated caregivers. So really what we're doing is this program has been going on since 2015. I personally go every Wednesday as much as possible, and we train the fathers first as a professional development training. So they're our students, okay? And we train them just like we would train our staff members, even better, on thematic STEM programs, and then also a section on childhood development. After that, for 2 hours, that's from 4 to 6 p.m. The following week, these fathers or uncles are then the teacher, and the children who come and the non-incarcerated caregivers who are there actually have a family science STEM learning experience with these dads, or it could be an uncle. And then this program goes on for 12 full weeks of 24 hours of training. And at the completion of the program, with 6 different modules of STEM, they get a certificate and really a sort of a public celebration, public being in front of all of the non-incarcerated caregivers, the deputies, etc. It's in a conference room, not within the jail. Right here in this image, they're testing foam rockets. You can see that there's a dowel. I don't know if you can see that or not. There's a protractor, paper protractor, and they're testing the launch angle, 30 degrees, 60 degrees, 75 degrees, launch angle versus the distance that the rocket will travel. And so they have hypotheses. They're learning the scientific method, the engineering design process. And in addition to that, at the reentry facility with Director David Boone, they're also taking CTE classes, carpentry, but most recently fiber optics with certificates, the only one in the country. And out of 10 spots, there are 50 applicants, and they fill those 10 spots, and they're graduating with that as well. So as an educator, you may think about this, because in the state of Louisiana, up to 1 out of 9 students has a parent who is incarcerated. And so right now, these students are excited. We're seeing changes in the students. We're seeing changes in the parents, both the fathers as well as the non-incarcerated caregivers. The fathers are saying that they want to get out, get a job so that mom doesn't have to work so hard. We're hopefully breaking that generational cycle that is very well known. And also, we're seeing tween girls who are saying at the beginning of the program that they are not interested in the STEM club at school, now signing up for the STEM club in school. We're seeing a mom who's a football mom who ends up bringing the rest of the football team to class because she doesn't have time to drop them off. And these kids are the first ones to try doing sea perch underwater robotics, because that's where we launched the program first. And these kids are talking about it outside of the program. So that is the most meaningful thing. And I do have a video link. I'll have to figure out how to put it in the chat box. But I will pass this off now to Sandy, and I will put this link about the video in the chat box. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much for that, Heather. Yeah, so I'm lucky enough that I've gotten to work in both informal after-school programming and in the classroom. And so one of my favorite programs was an informal program. And what it was an entrepreneurship workshop held with our local public library. And the kids had to do some market research and collect data, and they had to use their math skills to make their budget. They needed to write short business plans. We practiced public speaking. And of course, they needed to actually use engineering design process to create their products to sell. And we bring the local business owners in our community in as mentors to be kind of their market research. And the students actually had to pitch their business to these mentors and get feedback. So it was a whole multi-week over the summer program that the kids were coming in for. And it was great. The best part was that we coordinated with our local farmers market. I'm in a rural area. Our farmers market is the hub of where you see everybody in the weekend. So each student would set up a table for the day and they would sell whatever they had made after all these weeks of planning and work. And it was the most exciting day of the summer for like everybody in the community, not only for the students, but their mentors would promote the kids and come and shop. Families would spend the whole day at the farmers market. People really turned out to support these young entrepreneurs. And the farmers loved it because they had an opportunity to reach new folks who may not have otherwise come out to the market or may not have even known it existed. And I always stress that part to the kids because that's really, really important, right? This is an ecosystem of mutual support. I'm a biologist. It's all about ecosystems. And they were treated as equals in that system at that market. They were the same as any other artisan, any other farmer at that market. And that meant that they had to have that responsibility to show up and put their very best effort forward. And they took that really seriously. It was a valuable learning process even without the market, but because those skills that they learned during the workshop and the challenges that they had to overcome through this process, it just made it so much better because the community really supported them so enthusiastically in that learning process. And that experience made an indelible impression on my students in a way that I don't think anything else really could. And it gave them real confidence in their ability and their potential. And I would like to say several of them are still running those very fledgling businesses that they started all those years ago. So that's one of my favorites. Back to you, Martha.
I love that entrepreneurship spin, budding entrepreneurs. Well, thank you all for your thoughts. We're getting close to our end, but I do know that we're going to have some time for questions here in a little bit. So I have one more question for the panelists, but it's a two-parter. So what advice do you have for educators who are just beginning to explore the idea of incorporating community-based learning into their STEM programs? So Chrissy?
So I was just having this discussion with, it's been a hot topic for some reason. And so I was just having this discussion and someone had said to me that they felt like I have a unique skill set because I'm not a career educator. And that skill set being is that I'm comfortable reaching out to community and industry partners. However, I don't believe that because teachers are people. I mean, I believe teachers are comfortable reaching out and forming those partnerships. It's just a matter of taking that first step. So just pick up the phone and make it happen. I know it can be difficult. So this is where you may want to leverage your counselor or principal, because you're right. It's not something that we're trained to do, but I believe as teachers, it's something that every teacher is comfortable doing. And there are professionals out there, as I said before, who want to connect with you and they want to work with their students. Pick up the phone, send that email, leverage your community. Call an uncle or a cousin that you know is working with a company that you want to connect with. You already know the professionals that want to work with your students. You just have to make that connection to those people. So my advice is just take that first step because those people are waiting. They want to connect with you and they're ready to come into the classroom and work with your students.
Thank you, Chrissy. Heather?
Oh, yes, definitely. Just to add on to what Chrissy said, industry professionals are really eager to participate in the student learning experience because this is their next generation of workforce. It's important to them, but also they have a spirit of giving. As a grant writing professional myself, I do know that when we write grants and we write grants to companies, they have this section where we talk about volunteer opportunities. How can the company volunteer? And so one of the things, though, is finding the time and the venue where and when that it's amenable for them to volunteer. They often have employee volunteer opportunities. It's just that it has to fit within the employee's scheduling. The other thing is that if you don't know where to begin, try looking into your local STEM learning ecosystem. It may be a state-run STEM ecosystem, or it could be through STEM Learning Ecosystems Global or STEM Next. Also, your local libraries. Many libraries are heavily involved in STEM and STEAM. They may have make and go vans and often are very well connected. Also, your colleges, universities, your community colleges will have the career, your CTE programs, and they will want to connect as well because that is their goal. Enrollment is their goal. They're going to have industry professionals that they want to connect you with. And so, of course, then you've got your local science centers, museums, art, even art, because art often has, a STEM connection. So all of these different avenues are things that you can connect with. And now I would say with ChatGPT, you could probably find a lot of things, but I don't even think you need ChatGPT to find this. All right, thank you. And off to Sandy.
That was really great. Thank you so much. I'm going to share the one piece of advice that I forget most often, and that is set very clear goals. It can be so exciting when you start talking about all the people in your community that you can partner with, and it's easy to come up with like more than one idea at a time. I am the worst at this. I want to do it all, and I want to do it all now. But you really want to take a moment, step back, and think about what your objectives are. What do you want to offer your learners? What experience do you want them to have? And how does this tie into your educational objectives or curriculum or goals for your library? Once you know that, you can find the right people for that project, okay, and keep it focused. I'm not saying that you should build diverse connections and consider lots of new ideas, but it's a lot less overwhelming, especially when you're starting out, when you are just laser focused on what your learners' needs are in this moment for this project, for this experience. And that will help you find just the right people for your needs. And then there's always time to do another program. Yeah. But one thing at a time. I'm bad about that, so I'm telling you from my own experience, that's what you need to do.
Thank you, Sandy. Melissa Efta did ask about public library connections. I know, Heather, you jumped on that for a moment. Sandy, would you continue talking about some of the experiences you've had with libraries?
Yeah, as I mentioned before, I am in a rural area. I was actually the STEM and makerspace coordinator for my library system. So I had 4 different branches that I worked with, bringing programs across, a large rural area. And it is challenging in a rural area because you've got these kind of small pockets. It can be difficult for people to get to your programming, and funding can be really challenging. So I know that was part of the question that was asked. Partnerships to consider, your 4-H groups, your scout groups, your technical schools offering any kind of farm programs or agricultural programs at the local high schools. They'll all be really, really supportive of the kinds of programs that STEM and makerspace folks offer. Your libraries can also fundraise through their Friends of the Library program. Again, if you're laser focused on that goal and you could say, this is the project I want to bring to the library, that's a lot easier for folks to fund than it is to say, oh, I just want to do STEM, right? Say, I want to do something about the International Space Station in October for World Space Week. That's a lot easier for people to get behind. And don't forget your local businesses. Tractor Supply for us is a great one. Ace Hardware always has supplies for me. Even if they can't give you a check, they can often give you the materials that you need to realize your goals. So don't always think in terms of just money. And then look for grants. Talk to your local libraries. They're amazing researchers. They can find those small grants because they add up. In our state, we have the New Jersey Makers Day program, which all the libraries in our state will host STEM and maker activities on one weekend. And they do lots of grants throughout the year to support that programming year round. So you may find some interesting funding avenues in really out of the way, maybe not as widely published ways, but every $500 grant counts. And that's how I got 3D printing and a Glowforge and all of those things for our library, just one little bit at a time.
Thank you, Sandy. You know, one of the values of public libraries, and you touched on this a little bit, is the libraries have their own networks and they do a lot of sharing amongst one another. So there might be some shared best practices that the libraries could connect on across the country, especially those libraries in rural communities. The other thing that a lot of our STEM programs, and I know at Project Lead the Way, our elementary program is literacy connected, and there's a list of books that connect to each of the modules. Having libraries provide opportunities for extension of that reading. So here's the book, you know, here are all these books that are connected to STEM, and having STEM, you know, connected reading is really valuable, that the libraries can provide that extended opportunity outside of the classroom. And so I do have another question that actually came in early, and it was around sustainability. So I'd like to see if anybody wants to add any examples of how they've been able to sustain the relationships that you got started with, that first step that Sandy mentioned. So I'll let any one of the three of you take that topic.
I was just going to, speaking from just the perspective of working in a school, the best way I found to sustain the relationship is to continue to invite the professionals in to work with the students in various ways. I'm also the first Lego program delivery partner for the region. Every year we have these big Lego sets that have to be built, and our professionals love coming in, working alongside students to build those sets. So in continuing to sustain those relationships after that first contact, just continue to invite them in, and invite them in to see the fun side of learning as well. They really enjoy those opportunities to interact and engage with the students outside of just those normal initial ways that we introduce them to.
Sandy or Heather, you want to take that?
I would love to add on, as you know, the leader of a STEM learning ecosystem. We have open membership. It's free to join, and we have newsletters, social media, etc. And you know, we're not going to add anybody as a member unless they ask to be added, or unless they give us permission to add them to our e-news. Also, as a Science Center Museum, when you, as an educator, you can ask to be on our e-news. So, you know, getting communication is key. And so when you join as a member of the STEM learning ecosystem that we have, and I suspect many others, you're going to get access to all of the communications. In our monthly newsletter, we put out grant opportunities. We have a classified ads section, sort of, so any kind of job opportunities, any kind of other opportunities in the community. Whenever I get emails everywhere now, you know, communication is one of 3 nuggets required now for me as the STEM director in my region. So every time I get emails from everywhere, I have to collate that into a newsletter and send it out. And if it's timely, I'll send a news flash to my constituents. I have 233 constituents. So if you're not on my e-news list, I can't send it to you that way. So how else do I get the information out to you? So that's very important. Also, you know, your LATM, LSTM, I guess that's Louisiana, but your local, you know, there are often grants through those mechanisms. I'm speaking as a grant professional here as well, but that comes as a next question. But as far as sustainability as a community partner, ever since we got the GSK Science in the Summer in 2015, we have developed community partners that have been longstanding ever since then and just continued to grow. And all we have is these educators who ask in November, hey, when are you gonna get the next grant so that we can sign up in the summer? They're asking 9 months in advance.
Thank you, Heather. We have a question around, oh, go ahead. Did you want to hop in on that one, Sandy?
Yeah, and actually, another question that I just saw came in too, which is related. Heather, you're so right about communication. Like that is such a key. Remember, and as Chrissy pointed out too, this is a relationship that you're building with people, right? And it's never a one-way street. Let them be part of the fun, celebrate when they help you out. And Science Friday, we're a bunch of science nerds, so we're big on data. So we're always asking for feedback from participants, from those who helped us out, so that we can constantly improve our programs. Don't hesitate to ask for criticism too. It's okay. I'm sure that your knowledgeable experts have ways to make your programming even better. Don't be afraid to ask those questions. Go on.
No, go ahead.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I saw that the question came in about connections to after school and OST STEM programming. And I will just say Science Friday has lots of free resources along those lines. But along the communication side of things, I have found that it's really helpful to ask parents and to ask students what they want after school. What are they curious about? Do that needs assessment, and you're going to have so much more success. You shouldn't be involving your parents and your fellow teachers and your students once the program started. They need to be part of the process of creating that program, because then they're invested, right? And then you know that you're serving a need that really, really exists, and that's going to have interested parties. So I can't stress enough, just again, that relationship building is so important. And never be afraid. I used to work with my art teachers all the time when I was doing STEM programming. They are the most amazing, creative people and problem solvers like you cannot believe. So don't hesitate to ask other educators, even if they're not officially your science or STEM people, to help you with your after school programming and with that planning, because those cross-curricular opportunities are part of the magic of after school programming that isn't as tied to that curricular aspect, but maybe building upon the curricular aspect.
That's a great connection. In Kansas City, we did something unique, and it goes back to the out of school time partners understanding what's happening in the school day. So at the Kansas City Zoo, they were wanting to think about ways in which to connect to the school districts that were nearby. And they knew that a lot of them were implementing Project Lead the Way launch. And so they got the zoo education team trained in Project Lead the Way launch, so that when the students came to the zoo, they could continue that module work at the zoo. One of the modules is around how you rescue a tiger out of the moat. Well, if children haven't visited the zoo, they might not even know what a moat is. And so being able to see that, having connections made by the educators and by the zoo staff really helped to engage that out of school time partner in what was happening in the school day, but then also make connections to what was happening. We have a couple other questions around administrator perspective. And Chrissy, maybe this is one that you can take. What are the ways in which an administrator can help motivate teachers to make connections in the community?
And I think this is, I wouldn't say that, I can't think of a teacher that's not motivated. There's a reason why we do this. We show up here and teach 25 or 30 kids. It's not a matter of motivation. It's a matter of resources, and it's a matter of time. So I would say, and there's the bell, speaking of time. So I would say more so as administrators, focus on removing barriers. What can you take away? If a teacher has 200 things on their plate, and we want to add one more because we know it's going to be impactful for students, but can you take something away? Can you provide some additional resources? Can you give some access to some out of school opportunities that will allow the teacher to make connections to what they need to learn to effectively implement this new program or new strategy that you want to implement? So I would say more so, instead of thinking in terms of motivation, think in terms of removing barriers, providing resources, and adding and finding time for our teachers to do these things.
Thank you, Chrissy, for that time. There was a question that came in early as well, and it was like, you know, somebody mentioned, I think Sandy, you said, take that first step. And one of our participants in today's webinar said, I don't even know how to take that first step. And it made me think about, as an educator, thinking about the different networks that you're already a part of. Do you have membership in a teacher network? You know, one of the things that I find valuable at Project Lead the Way is the network of Project Lead the Way teachers and that cohort and sharing. There's a blog at pltw.org/blog where you can actually get examples of community connections, and you don't have to be a PLTW teacher to access that. You know, Sandy, Heather, Chrissy, what other kind of first steps, if you don't even know where to start as a teacher, that you might make?
So I'll jump in and I'll say,
go ahead, Chrissy.
Okay, I was gonna jump in. I think one of the first steps you can take is, someone mentioned the ecosystem, and I just think about our ecosystem here in Kansas City and the КC STEM Alliance as the leader and convener of that ecosystem. We're known as the convener, so we can give you access to those resources. So I think that first step would just be finding the people that have access to the resources. That's step number one. And then I'm just going to put a quick plug in for First Robotics for the after school program, because I am also a First Robotics person as well. Our students always tell us Project Lead the Way taught us our skills. First Robotics gave us our family. So if you're looking for something for after school programming, keep First Robotics in mind. Sandy, do you want to continue on with that question?
I mean, I always start with my parents. You know, those are the people that have the ideas. That you'd be amazed how many engineers I found just among the parents that are showing up for a library program, or they're showing up at the farmer's market or whatever. So don't forget that your caregivers are a resource as well. And honestly, Google is your friend. Never be afraid just to send an email. The worst that's going to happen is they're not going to respond, right? It doesn't hurt anything. So I'm always willing to ask the question of anybody. A cold email or a cold call is your friend. You never know what magic is going to happen. It's a little scary, okay, but it's so worth it for your learners to make those connections. So, you know, Google it and hope for the best.
Yeah. Well, and Sandy, how did you know one of the questions was about parents? So, Heather, do you want to talk a little bit about parents? I know as one of the national ecosystems, parents and the trusted adult in a child's life is a very important part of the STEM learning ecosystem.
Well, exactly. And actually, one of the things that we pride ourselves on in Northwest Louisiana is community engagement. And that's engaging the entire family. We have family-based STEAM programs where it does engage the entire family, and not just behind the walls of a prison. You know, it's out in the community. We meet the community where they are at various community centers. Many times it's a different nonprofit hosting it, you know, an event, and they, you know, the North Louisiana STEAM Alliance and Let's STEM will come and help. One time it was the Defenders of Liberty Barksdale Air Show, and they needed to populate 80 booths at the hangar full of STEAM. And these are families that are coming, and they came to us as the North Louisiana STEAM Alliance and said, we need help populating these booths. And then the next thing you know, we're populating the booths because we have so many different organizations as members that we've cultivated since 2016. And we've got families coming to the booths, and they're interested, and, you know, you just want to show them that individual attention. And then you get to know these families. They can sign up to become members or sign up for more information, or maybe even some other place-based learning, opportunities such as a field trip to SciPort. You know, we try to have this continuity of care where we provide them with information about everything wherever there is going to be a community-based activity like a STEM fair or a STEAM fair. We say, okay, we're going to bring information about the library programs, about the, you know, museum programs, about the art fairs, about anything else. And then we share it with everybody who is there.
Thank you so much. Sandy, would you talk about how other interdisciplinary teachers can help STEM teachers in their program?
Yeah, I mean, just going back to the entrepreneurship program I mentioned before, right? That was a real team effort. So we would have a math teacher come in and talk about expenses versus revenue and kind of go over a budget, teach them how to use a spreadsheet. Your ELA folks can get involved in how do you write good copy? How do you make a really good headline? How do you do that? Because there's a real art to that. That's a very specific type of writing. Your art teacher, those kids need to make posters. They need to design their tables. So, you know, the art teacher can get involved in that and really help them, you know, display their idea in a visual way, which is such an important skill for all of us. And then, of course, our engineering design folks, our makers, our scientists, they're going to teach the kids how that iterative process works, because you know what? Nothing they make, no product they invent the first time is going to work right. So they're going to have to learn that process of how do you improve upon things. So look for those connections and be willing to say, you know what? I forget who said this before. I'm not the expert in this particular thing. I think it was you, Chrissy. If you're not the expert in visual design, find someone who is and bring them into the process. It takes the workload off of you and it makes a richer experience for the learners.
Thank you, Sandy. And Chrissy, we are going to land this plane with a really important question. How can STEM programs ensure that community partnerships are inclusive and diverse, reflecting the needs and interests of all the community members? This is the hallmark and has been the hallmark of your work in Kansas City, and I would love for you to share your thoughts as we wrap up today.
Yeah, so there is no program that every student can't participate in that's not fit for every community. What we have to do as leaders in this work is identify and remove the barriers so that everybody has access to these opportunities. We know there are multiple, think about Project Lead the Way. It is an exceptional program, but all students may not be getting access to this exceptional high quality learning opportunity. So we have to figure out why, and then we have to start kicking down those barriers, finding the keys to being gatekeepers in a positive way, opening up the gates to opportunities for our students and our communities to participate. These programs are there. They're made for all of our students. All students have the skill set or can learn the skill set to participate. We just have to be the ones to remove the barrier so they can have access to them.
Thank you so much. And thank you to our panelists who I know on a daily basis serve as gatekeepers for the young people that they engage with. Thank you to all of you for your time participating today in the webinar. If you would like to watch today's presentation again, an on-demand archive will be made available through edweek.org or using today's link within the next 24 hours. You can also visit edweek.org to find articles that explore today's topic. We would like to thank EdWeek and PLTW for hosting this webinar. If you'd like to find out more information about Project Lead the Way, please visit their website at www.pltw.org. We have many events coming up at PLTW, including our Sparking Curiosity Launch Conference in St. Louis and our virtual PLTW showcases. If you would like to attend more PLTW events, check out our website. This concludes the presentation well, it was a performance. This concludes the presentation portion of our webinar. But PLTW team members and panelists will remain to answer any questions that you have. Have a great rest of your day.